We are surrounded by so great a cloud of witnesses, for we gather together this day to bear witness to the holy, that presence which lives in, among, and beyond us, that stretches back in time and moves us forward into the future. Gather we now to celebrate that which was, that which is, and that which shall be. Gather we now, as we have always done, united by story and bound by love. Come, let us worship together. And as we kindle this flame, may it spark in each of us connection and commitment to this living tradition we share and to one another. Our opening hymn this morning is Once to Every Soul and Nation. It was written by James Russell Lowell in the 19th century as an abolitionist call to arms. This morning we invite you to listen to the Jubilee singers singing this. If you know the tune, you're invited to hum along, but you may remain seated for this opening hymn.
Welcome to All Souls Church. Welcome to a community where our search for spirituality and our passion for justice meet and mingle, where our head and our heart are divided no more, where reverence for the earth and belief in the dignity of every person inform our ethics, where music is the expression of our joy, prayer a sign of our faith, and acts of justice a symbol of our hope. My name is Ebony Contreras Peace, and I'm serving as today's worship associate. We extend a special greeting to those joining us for the first time and those who have continued to attend weekly. For those in the building, you can access the order of service by QR code, although we have limited printed order of service for those who would prefer that. For those watching on Zoom, the order of service can be found in the chat. This is now the time where we behold one another, both in person and virtually on Zoom. If you're in the sanctuary, we encourage you to get up and move around, greeting one another with an elbow bump, a bow, or a gas ho, with hands to palm. Or if you'd prefer to keep your distance, just put your arms across your chest. Let's take time now to greet and behold one another.
Okay, I'm late because someone wanted to hug me. What can I say?
Yay for hugs. I'll take hugs.
Blame it on the front row. Um, hello. My name is still Reverend Louise. I am your Minister of Congregational Care. And we have a few announcements today, of course, about the life of the congregation. We Connect Wednesdays are going on every week on Wednesday. This week is special. They're all special, but join Judith Bauer and Judy Lever on November 17th at 7:30 when we continue the theme of ancestors through the lens of poetry. It's going to be Rita Dove and Joy Harjo, who are both women of color who've served as U.S. Poet Laureates. The link is always on the church calendar on the homepage, and you do not need to register in advance. Just zoom in. Tonight at 5 p.m., Post Classical, which is an organization, is sponsoring a special concert called The Souls of Black Folks. Post Classical wanted to host their first concert of the season at All Souls because of our commitment to racial justice. And as a gesture of appreciation for that support, Post Classical is offering a discount to any All Souls member who wishes to attend. You can find info about the concert by Googling up the website, Post Classical, and in our weekly bulletin. The Reverend Bill Sinkford, who is our minister in residence, will be joining us next week. He'll be here all the way through the week, starting Tuesday and then preaching next Sunday. And he is going to lead a conversation called Religious Pluralism, a focused conversation with Reverend Bill. He writes, both sides of the UU family tree sprang from Christian roots. How do we hold that ancestry in a multi-religious world? So the day and time will be announced shortly. Thanksgiving is just days away, okay, about 10 days, but soon. We have two opportunities to give care. We're calling it Connect and Collect. Connect is your chance to be paired with a fellow congregant to do a check-in phone call or a Zoom, probably for someone who is not coming out that much, and we need people to tend one another here. Or if you have a seat or two at your Thanksgiving table, you may invite someone to dinner. These check-ins can happen Thursday and Friday of the weekend on your time. Contact me to sign up for Congregational Care, Connect, and then for Collect is the opportunity to give giant food cards to several of our partner organizations. We're not able to do the big food collection in these times, so we are giving through cards. All the details are in the weekly bulletin. The link will be posted in the Zoom chat. We thank you for your generous spirits as we connect and collect for Thanksgiving abundance. Now we move to our time of congregational care. We begin with gratitude for the beautiful celebration of life for Marjorie Myers yesterday. This gorgeous flower display is from that service and the work of so many, led by Meg Staines and Daniel Wall, who are from our gardening angel crew that Marjorie was part of. So thank you for the beauty. And all our ushering team had a heroic job yesterday, truly. So much gratitude to Emily Kirchland, Mark Matthews, Marianne Anderson, and many more who managed to jump in and work with the flow of people, which was many. We hold the family in our hearts, all of whom were deeply moved by this major All Souls effort. Today we celebrate the 40th wedding anniversary of Perry and Terry Green, who married in a Quaker meeting house in Lincoln, Virginia on November 14th, 1981. They had hoped to be in Mexico. However, Perry has had repeated kidney infections and is in the hospital today for kidney infection treatment. So not that great an anniversary, but we wish you love and that you get to go somewhere soon. Our thoughts remain with Reverend Catherine Clarenbach, who has been hospitalized for weeks in Portland, Oregon. However, she will be discharged tomorrow, so we wish her prayers for that smooth transfer home. And finally, we offer our deep condolences to Chuck Woldridge, whose father, Charlie, died peacefully on Thursday morning in Kentucky. We hold Chuck, his sister Terry, and his brother in our hearts. They will have a family memorial there on December 4th, so blessings for this preparation. And now, a time for your names or your situations into this shared space. You may say them aloud, you may put them in the chat on Zoom. A moment for you to recall. Who is on your mind and heart today? So would you pray or meditate with me? Holy ones of many names, love and light abundant, the season is full of so much. We mark 200 years of All Souls history. We honor those who have died, those just born, those still growing, and all the passages in between. In a world that often feels intense and unstable, we offer gratitude for this anchor, this precious and growing beloved community. May we bring our broken hearts and our tender spirits and the joy of true connection to this place and to the world, which needs our light. Blessed be. Amen. For all those prayers named and unnamed, we hold you in our hearts with love and blessing. Amen. We have two readings this morning, one from an ancient source and one from a modern source. This first one is from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 10, verses 17 and 18. As Jesus started on his way, a man ran up and knelt before him. "Good teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "Why do you call me good?" Jesus replied. "No one is good except God alone."
Reading from a modern source. Meditation at Decatur Square by Natasha Trethewey. In which I try to decipher the story it tells. This syntax of monuments flanking the old courthouse. Here, a rough outline, like the torso of a woman great with child, a seatite boulder from which the Indians girdled the core, to make of it a bowl, and left in the stone a wound. Here, the bronze figure of Thomas Jefferson, quill in hand, inscribing a language of freedom, a creation story, his hand poised at the word happiness. There is not yet an ending, no period, the single mark, intended or misprinted, that changes the meaning of everything. Here too for the Confederacy, an obelisk, oblivious in its name, a word that also meant the symbol to denote in ancient manuscripts the spurious, corrupt, or doubtful. At its base, forged in concrete, a narrative of valor, virtue, states' rights. Here, it is only the history of a word, obelisk, that points us toward what's not there, all of it. Palimpsest, each mute object, repeating a single refrain, remember this.
They are coming down, one by one by one. Now, they're not falling of their own accord, but pushed, pummeled, hacked, toppled, shoved, or removed by their cities after years of debate. They are coming down in Birmingham, in Bentonville, and Baltimore, in Nashville, and New Orleans, in Mobile, and Montgomery. More than 100 statues or markers of the Confederacy were removed in 2020 alone. But there's one that remained until June 23rd, 2020, one of the largest statues that stood on a 115-foot tall perch in the center of Marion Square, where it had lived since the Ladies Monument Association of Charleston, South Carolina voted to, quote, aid in the erection in or near the city of Charleston a monument sacred to the memory of John C. Calhoun. And as you can see, John C. Calhoun is also looking at the steeple of Mother Emanuel AME Church. Now, All Souls knows something about former Vice President of the United States of America, John C. Calhoun, because he is one of our ancestors. This past Thursday, we celebrated the official date of All Souls Charter on November 11th, 1821. How many of you were there this Thursday? Woohoo! That was fun. That was really fun. It was a great celebration. Of course, the theme for this month of November is ancestors, and last week I looked at two of All Souls' more prominent clergy ancestors, the Reverend A. Powell Davies and David Eaton. But this morning I want to launch off into a different direction, beginning with two of our more notable lay ancestors, John Quincy Adams, 6th President of the United States and staunch abolitionist, and John C. Calhoun, Vice President to John Quincy Adams, segregationist and slaveholder. I had to include a slide of John C. Calhoun being removed from his pedestal. Bye-bye. But why were these two men, so different in political affiliations, attracted to Unitarianism? How can you have an abolitionist and a supporter of slavery both believe in the ideals, promises, and possibilities of Unitarianism? Well, let's start with John Quincy Adams. Adams was a founder of All Souls, and it's relatively easy to understand why he was a founder of All Souls. As a boy, he attended First Parish Church in Quincy, Mass, with his father, the 2nd President of the United States, John Adams. And after arriving in Washington, he became one of the 27 founding members of the First Unitarian Church of Washington. Adams cherished the intellectual freedom that accompanied Unitarianism. But as much as we may admire Adams' anti-slavery viewpoints, look, I'm just going to be honest with you, he was not the kind of church member that you would necessarily enjoy talking to over coffee hour. He was hypercritical. He was acerbic. He was known to be argumentative. He was the kind of member who, when heading for the microphone at the annual meeting, would make you inwardly groan, knowing that his arguments would be brilliant and would be filled with blistering and exhaustive critiques. So we embrace John Quincy Adams as our ancestor, but we ask ourselves, so how then did John C. Calhoun become attracted to Unitarianism? Well, Calhoun was a deeply cerebral man, and he enjoyed deep conversations, including with women whom he considered his intellectual equals. In 1820, along with John Quincy Adams, Calhoun contributed money for the construction of Washington's First Unitarian Church. Now, what we don't know is whether Calhoun attended regularly, or if at all. That's unknown, because a donation to help build a church is not the same thing as being a member. But there is plenty of evidence to suggest that Calhoun took more than a passing interest in Unitarianism. In a new biography that came out about Calhoun called Calhoun, American Heretic, Robert Elder wrote this. He said, Calhoun's gravitation towards Unitarianism seems to have been the natural result of his temperament, his devotion to reason, and his embrace of progress. In fact, Calhoun was so convinced of the efficacy of Unitarianism that he remarked this. He said, quote, Unitarianism was the true faith and must ultimately prevail over the world. It will be the religion of the country, sir, in 50 years, he said to a colleague, indicating that he was no better prophet than Thomas Jefferson, who said the same thing about Unitarianism. So, in their time, both Adams and Calhoun would have been considered great men. Great men is, I actually looked this up, it's an actual theory which believes that history can be largely explained by the impact of great men who, due to their superior intellect, heroic courage, extraordinary leadership abilities, and inspiration, have had a decisive historical effect. Emerson declared that it is, quote, natural to believe in great men, whether this is a fact or not. We do believe in them and worship them. We do this not because he is essentially different from us, but because of his identity with us. He is our best representative and reflects on a colossal scale, the scale to which we would aspire, our highest aims, objects, powers, and possibilities, end quote. But, as fellow Unitarian Universalist and author Carrie Folan notes, she said John Quincy Adams actually would disagree with this. In 1831, John Quincy Adams wrote this in his journal: "Democracy has no monuments. It strikes no medals. It bears the head of no man upon a coin. Its very essence is iconoclastic. This is the reason why Congress has never been able to erect a monument to Washington." Well, Adams wasn't a great prophet either, because in 1888, the obelisk monument to Washington that Adams disdained was dedicated on the National Mall. And during the founding decades of the United States, this monarchical concept of commemoration was dismissed as obsolete. In her article, Empty Pedestals, Folan writes this. She says, monuments built in honor of great men were considered relics of the old world. In the new world, the true memory of democracy was supposed to live in the hearts of the people. Well, it states the obvious to say that this worship of great men is applied almost exclusively to white men. And furthermore, the vast majority of monuments erected between 1890 and 1950 serve another, more sinister purpose. They were deliberately placed in city squares and town centers to send a message from the defenders of slavery that we may have lost the Civil War, but we are really still in power. We glorify and support the cause of the Civil War, the maintenance of white supremacy. When I moved back to Charlottesville, Virginia in August 2017, my husband, who had lived there previously, gave me a historical tour of Charlottesville. And one of the first places we visited was what was then called Lee Park. Of course, in the center of that park was a statue of Robert E. Lee, sitting atop the horse in mid-stride. Lee's presence is upright and commanding. The plinth in which it stands is elegant and stately. And it was on August 12, 2017, that my husband and I stood along the perimeters of that same park, along with about 60 other clergy and lay leaders, with the intention to create a barrier with our bodies to the park when the Unite the Right rally came marching into town that day with their polo shirts and their khaki pants and their tiki torches and their chants, "You will not replace us, and Jews will not replace us." So fast forward to the aftermath of the Unite the Right rally. After protester Heather Heyer was killed by a deranged Unite the Right member, it seemed fitting and appropriate to no longer see the symbol of that unified hate And so it was shrouded in black tarp, which looks to me like a giant garbage bag, covering up the statue. But it wasn't until 4 years later, on July 10th, 2021, that the statues of Robert E. Lee and Stonewall Jackson in a nearby park were finally removed. The plinth, the stand on which the monuments held, they remain empty now as a kind of a placeholder, as a question mark, as a silent tribute to all the persons whose bravery and courage and valor and contributions to our country continue to not be recognized. So the question now is, what do you do with that empty space that they used to occupy? One teacher in City Neighbors Charter School in Baltimore proposed an answer. This teacher, Mr. Toops, wanted his class to engage with the issues of why certain monuments were being removed. So he created a curriculum entitled Who Deserves a Monument? His students were asked to consider why some people got monuments in the past. And in a classroom discussion, one raised her hand and said, well, in history, white people like to put up white people's monuments. So the teacher challenged his students to find other people in history that could take the place of those Confederate monuments which were being taken down. Well, in the first iteration of this, they came up with names of celebrities or sports heroes, Michael Jordan, Muhammad Ali, Jada Pinkett Smith. But through the course of their study, they went back into history to talk about unsung heroes like Frances Ellen Watkins Harper, a powerful Unitarian poet whose words awakened a nation to the inhumanity of slavery. Or Irene Morgan, who predated Rosa Parks in taking a stand against segregation. Or William Parker. Anybody heard of William Parker? I had not. But to tell William Parker's story would require an entire sermon in itself. But let me just say a few words about him, so you too will wonder why we have never found him in our history books. William Parker was born a slave in 1821 in Anne Arundel County, Maryland. He escaped slavery, became an abolitionist and an anti-slavery activist. And he was instrumental in what became known as the Christiana Riot of 1851, an uprising against slave hunters in Pennsylvania who were attempting to return a slave under the Fugitive Slave Act of 1850. Parker was more fierce, more radical, and had more to lose than his contemporary John Brown. He and his equally fierce and amazing wife, Eliza, bore 10 children, eventually found safe harbor in Canada, until Parker went back to Christiana for a reunion with those who participated in the Christiana Rebellion. If anyone should get a monument, shouldn't it be someone like William Parker, who was and is and remains an unsung hero for freedom? Well, this is where the story takes an odd turn. As I said, Parker left his abolitionist wife, Eliza, to attend the reunion at Christiana, and it was there that he fell in love with another man's wife. They moved to Kenton, Ohio, and lived out the rest of their days, and according to the story, never again had contact with Eliza or their children in Canada. So for all of Parker's bravery and courage, the truth that he abandoned his wife and children, never communicating with them his whereabouts, or that he had taken a new wife and formed a new life in Ohio, that is also true. So imagine if you were one of Eliza and William Parker's descendants, and you come upon a monument to your ancestor in Christiana, Pennsylvania. As you gaze upon this monument, you can honor William Parker's bravery and resistance to white supremacy. But you also know that your other ancestor, Eliza Parker, and her children were abandoned. How would you feel about the monument to William Parker then? Here are the problems with monuments to human beings. John Quincy Adams may have been on the right side of history with his abolitionist beliefs, but he could be caustic and cruel in his denunciations. John C. Calhoun on the wrong side of history, yet his insistence on freedom, reason, tolerance in religion would have been widely embraced by us today. Here's the problem with creating a hagiographic history of human beings, that we are all neither sinners nor saints. We are capable of extraordinary courage and astonishing cruelty. The problem with monuments and markers, or even naming rooms and buildings after people, is that we don't know what to do with them after we find out the whole truth of their lives. So the removal of monuments from the public sphere is but one symptom of a larger reality. How can we acknowledge that our histories contain multitudes? Contains the alcoholic and the artist, the statesman and the enslaver, the philosopher and the philanderer. This is a spiritual challenge, not just for who gets a monument, but for our everyday lives. How do I look upon you and know that you are capable of doing me great harm and great good, all within one lifespan? This is why I keep returning to that one tiny line from the Gospel of Mark. The preface to the reading you heard is that this young lawyer is all primed and ready to have a debate with Jesus, and he approaches Jesus. He says, "Good teacher." And before he has a chance to say anything else, Jesus interrupts him and says, "Why do you call me good? No one but God is good." In other words, Jesus refuses to take on the mantle of sainthood himself. And I suspect that Jesus knew a spiritual truth, that none of us, not even him, are all good, or for that matter, all bad. It's true for people and for institutions. It's true for the church as well. Ministers are held to a very high standard because of the power they are given when they accept a call to be a congregation's spiritual leader. So it's a devastating blow to learn, in addition to your minister being present for your child's dedication and your mother's death, offering sermons that inspire and stir, that same minister may have used his charisma to seduce women in the congregation, or suffered from alcoholism that affected his ability to be fully present to and with the congregation. It's hard to understand that a beloved coach who inspires a winning team can be cruel and abusive to the very same players she professes to love. It's heartbreaking to realize that a teacher whom your child has adored was arrested for addiction to child pornography. How do we hold these dichotomies together? When monuments fall, what replaces them? When people fail to live up to the one-sided history we tell about them, what do we do with them? Hate the sin, love the sinner? What if the sin is really egregious? Can we separate the sin from the sinner? And yet, our Universalist faith teaches us, as Brian Stevenson also reminds us, each of us is more than the worst thing we've ever done. So let's go back to Carrie Folan's article for a moment. Quote, monuments built in honor of great men were considered relics of the old world. In the new world, the true memory of democracy was supposed to live in the hearts of the people. So that would suggest that we should have no public monuments to people. I suggest that we move away from the lionization of human beings through public monuments. Instead, we should commemorate events and ideas, and if we must acknowledge a person, we can honor them through art that can be part of a public monument. And I want to share with you one example of what I mean. Not too far from the Charlottesville Park, where Robert E. Lee used to stand, on the grounds of University of Virginia is a memorial to enslaved laborers, to the 4,000 women and men whose hands literally built the University of Virginia. These were women and men, some named but many unnamed, represented by letters or gashes on the wall, if the names of those actual persons were not known. But there's an image from the face of one woman who was formerly enslaved by a UVA professor, which is subtly carved into the exterior wall of the monument. Her name was Isabella Gibbons, and after she was emancipated, she became a teacher and a leader in the city of Charlottesville. You can't see her most of the day, except when the sun and shadows play over the memorial at twilight. And then you can see her eyes, only her eyes, emerging from the wall of the monument as the sun goes down. Isabella's eyes are like the obelisk in Natasha Trethewey's poem, when she says, they point us towards what's not there, looking at us through time. Two eyes that repeat a single refrain. Remember this.
There is a time, there is
Jiddu Krishnamurti, a South Indian philosopher, speaker, and writer, taught us that if you lose relationship with nature, you lose relationship with humanity. This resonates deeply with me because one of my own spiritual practices is nature-based. I look to nature as my teacher. I believe that I can learn from nature on how to advance humanity and coexist. When I think of giving to my spiritual community, I look to nature's wisdom. What can nature teach me about offering to church? I realized something very simple. For a rose to bloom, it takes a seed. Then the sun is generous with its light. The soil holds it safe, and the rainwater gives it sustenance. The sun, soil, and water work together to support the seed and its growth. It's like its own beautiful, sacred trinity of growth and prosperity. All Souls Unitarian has been planted for over 200 years. I am still learning about all of the beautiful flowers that have grown and continue to be nurtured. We need volunteers and paid staff to do our sacred work. We are guided by love and need this energy to sustain our spirits as we journey together seeking justice. We also need money, financial contributions. I believe our financial offering is part of our own sacred trinity of growth and prosperity. The seeds of love and justice cannot grow and prosper with the sun alone, or with only soil. Nature teaches that the growth and prosperity is a result of multiple important factors: hands-on work, financial gifts, and heart. When I give to my church, I'm investing in love, justice, and peace. When I give to my church, I am putting my money where my values are. You may click the link in the chat, which will direct you to All Souls online giving. Thank you in advance for your generosity.
Come thou fount of every blessing, tune our hearts to sing thy grace. Streams of mercy never ceasing, call for songs of loudest praise. While the hope of life's perfection fills our hearts with joy and love, teach us ever to be faithful. May we still thy goodness prove. Come thou fount of every vision, lift our eyes to what may come. See the lion and the young lamb dwell together in thy home. Hear the cries of war fall silent, feel our love glow like the sun. When we all serve one another, then our heaven is begun. Come thou fount of inspiration, turn our lives to higher ways. Lift our gloom and desperation, show the promise of this day. Help us find ourselves in
love that hymn. Here are these words by benediction from my colleague, Reverend Leah Derlin Jones, who serves in Charlottesville, Virginia, who writes, "For those who came before us, we offer our gratitude and thanks. May their memories be a blessing. May we feel surrounded by their love. As we go forth from this time and this place, let us be inspired by their courage, their wisdom, and their dreams, and let us honor them by doing the work of living boldly, loving mightily, and creating heaven on earth. Amen, and may it be so." And after the service, we'll immediately go outside for our musical benediction with the Jubilee Singers. Blessings.
Freedom is never a final state, but an always evolving process. True peace is not merely the absence of war, it is the presence of justice. Justice roll down, justice roll down, justice roll down like waters, and righteousness
Justice is never given, it is exacted from constant struggle. Those who want peace without struggle, others want crops without plowing.
A pebble tossed into a pond causes ripples in all directions. Our words and deeds for justice are like that pebble.
Justice roll down, let justice roll down, let justice roll down like waters, and righteousness
inequality.